All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services informational webinar on the Dam Repair Assistance Grant for state fiscal year 2025. My name is Brittany Felder. I'm the Grants Manager for the South Carolina Dam Safety Program. Today, we're also joined by Dam Safety Program Section Manager John McCain, Environmental Health Manager Katarina Gates, and Dam Safety Environmental Coordinator Sam Johnson, who will all be moderating this webinar and assisting with the question and answer portion of today's live event. Today's webinar will provide an overview of this upcoming funding opportunity, including eligibility criteria, the application process, and grant management. You will be able to ask questions by emailing them to us at desresponse@des.sc.gov, and we will take the time to answer as many of these as we can at the end of the presentation. We'll start with a brief overview of the purpose and objectives for this grant. Last year, Senate Budget Proviso 55.24 made $1.5 million in state funds available for the South Carolina Dam Safety Program to develop a cost-sharing grant program to correct dam deficiencies identified by the department. For this fiscal year, SCDES plans to solicit applications from eligible applicants for pre-construction and construction activities associated with dam rehabilitations and removals for eligible high and significant hazard dams. Grant funding is limited to eligible activities on eligible dams carried out by eligible applicants. We'll discuss in this presentation the eligibility requirements for each of these three areas, the application process, and grant management procedures that will be expected of grant recipients. Dam Repair Assistance Program aims to reduce and eliminate risk associated with dams, improve accessibility of financial assistance to dam owners who may not be eligible to apply for other dam safety grants, and provide financial assistance for the rehabilitation or removal of high and significant hazard dams that fail to meet minimum dam safety standards and pose an unacceptable risk to life and property. First, we will discuss eligibility criteria for dams. To be considered eligible for funding, a dam must be regulated by the South Carolina Dam Safety Program. If you are unsure if a dam is regulated by our program, you can search for it on SCDES's Dam Safety web application, accessible via the SCDES Dam Safety Program website. Alternatively, you can email us at desresponse@des.sc.gov, and we can search our records for you. The dam must have a hazard classification of high or significant. This classification is based on the potential for loss of life or property damage downstream of the dam if it were to fail. The dam must also have a condition assessment rating of poor or unsatisfactory as identified by SCDES, or a dam safety deficiency that has been identified by an engineer that was not revealed in a department inspection. The condition assessment is an assessment of the dam's current condition based on preliminary inspection by SCDES. If a dam safety deficiency is recognized during this preliminary inspection, the dam receives either a poor or unsatisfactory condition rating. If your dam does not have a condition rating of poor or unsatisfactory, it is not automatically deemed ineligible. For example, if you are able to provide evidence of a dam safety deficiency identified by a licensed professional engineer for a dam with a fair condition rating, and all other elements of the grant application are eligible, then the application will be considered eligible. You can find both the hazard classification and the condition assessment rating on your dam's most recent preliminary inspection letter. If you do not have a copy of your dam's most recent preliminary inspection letter, please contact us and we can send you a copy. Ineligible dams. The following types of dams are not eligible for funding: licensed hydroelectric dams, federally owned dams, dams built under the authority of the Secretary of Agriculture, such as PL 566 Watershed Conservation District dams, dams that create a direct source of revenue, such as hydropower, drinking water supply, etc., dams where the owner has taxing authority and does not share ownership with an eligible entity, and low hazard dams. Your dam must have a current emergency action plan. or EAP, or provide assurance that an EAP will be developed within 12 months of award acceptance. For planning, engineering, and design projects, the EAP must be developed and approved prior to the final request for reimbursement. For construction projects, no work on the project may commence until an EAP has been developed and approved by SCDES. In this next section, we will discuss the criteria for applicant eligibility. Applicants must meet any one of the following criteria in order to be considered eligible to receive grant funds. A private entity, such as a corporation or LLC, and the private entity must also be in good standing with the South Carolina Secretary of State, an individual, or a nonprofit organization that is not a government organization. Applicants must also be able to demonstrate clear ownership of the dam. SCDES will make the ownership determination, which may require use of outside legal counsel. Community associations and applicants must be If your dam has multiple owners, a grant can only be awarded to one owner out of multiple dam owners. The dam owners must either form a partnership or decide who will be the applicant and recipient of the grant. All dam owners must demonstrate support for the project, even if only one or some are supplying the funding for the project. If there are multiple applications for the same dam, this will be taken as a sign that all dam owners are not in agreement and will result in the rejection of all applications for the dam for this funding cycle. Grants will not be awarded if only part of a dam is addressed. Projects must correct deficiencies of the entire dam. The cutoff date for all eligibility criteria will be December 31st of each year. Applicants and dams that do not meet the eligibility requirements by the state will not be considered for funding during the current funding cycle. The date listed on your dam's most recent preliminary inspection letter is the official date of determination for eligibility. If the date on your letter is past the deadline, the second most recent preliminary inspection will be used. The next section will go over which types of activities will be eligible for funding. Eligible activities under this grant fall into the following categories: preparedness planning, such as emergency action plans and emergency operations plans, project planning and operation and maintenance plans, preliminary engineering, engineering design, outreach and risk communication, and construction, which may include repair, rehabilitation, and removal projects, instrumentation, such as the installation of sensors and early warning systems. Activities that address dam deficiencies as a result of deferred maintenance will also be considered under this category, but with a maximum cost share of 50%. Here are some examples of eligible activities for each category. As a reminder, these slides will be uploaded to our website for future reference. Ineligible activities. The following activities are considered ineligible under this grant: routine operation and maintenance, purchase of equipment that is not an integral part of the funded project, establishment of a reserve fund, activities that increase the hazard classification or risk, such as increasing the dam height or storage capacity, work that would result in duplicative data that is publicly available from the state or other source, such as a geotechnical investigation where past geotechnical investigation already exists and remains valid, unless previously approved by the state. Some additional ineligible activities include payment of principal or interest on existing debt or any interest payments associated with project financing, costs associated with bid protests, litigation costs, including but not limited to appeals of SCDES decisions, activities that do not serve to facilitate repair or risk reduction, activities that do not serve a public benefit, such as driveway paving, private docks, boat ramps, etc., costs associated with activities that have not been approved by the state, and the construction of new dams. Next, we'll go over the screening and ranking process for applications. Application selection will involve a two-part process, an eligibility screening and a technical ranking. The initial eligibility screening aims to identify in advance applications that meet all dam applicant and activity eligibility criteria, meet all grant application requirements, and correct deficiencies for the entire dam. If there are multiple dam owners, the project cannot address issues on only one owner's portion. The scope of work must provide a whole dam solution. Applications that pass the eligibility screening will be reviewed by the Dam Safety Program and evaluated on technical merits of the dam and proposed project using a points-based system. The score will be based primarily on risk and risk reduction as a result of project implementation. The ranking tool will be published to the SCDES Dam Safety Program website as an attachment to the Notice of Funding Opportunity once the application period has opened. Using this tool, you will be able to view the criteria that will be used to rank applications, as well as point values for each as you develop your grant application. Some examples of criteria that will be used to rank applications include: what is the hazard classification of the dam? What is the condition rating of the dam? What impacts would there be in the event of a dam failure? Does the project decrease the dam's hazard potential? Will the project provide a spillway capacity that meets or exceeds regulations? Is the dam currently under a state-issued emergency or inspection and repair order? Is there a high or significant hazard dam downstream that could potentially be impacted from a dam breach? Next, we'll be discussing the cost share requirements for this grant program. Also, I would like to remind everyone again that you can submit any questions you have to desresponse@des.sc.gov. You can find the email address written out at the bottom of each slide. The default cost share for grants will be 50% state funds and 50% recipient matching funds. The recipient's match requirement may be met in the form of cash, i.e. your own funds, and/or in-kind services. State match can increase based on demonstration of financial need. Activities to address dam deficiencies that are the result of deferred maintenance are eligible for maximum 50% cost share, such as tree removal. If applicants have made a self-determination of financial hardship in their application, upon SCDES verification, the recipient match requirement will be reduced from 50% to 25% for a 75% state match. Applicants making a self-determination of financial hardship must provide the past 3 years of tax returns and a bank statement with their application. Grant recipients may meet their match requirement using in-kind match, which refers to the value of non-monetary contributions to meet the recipient's match requirement. Examples of in-kind match include donated services, materials, your own labor force, and equipment. Application timeline. The Notice of Funding Opportunity for this grant program will be posted to our website no later than Thursday, May 1st of 2025. The Notice of Funding Opportunity will provide additional details on how to complete the application requirement and grant management procedures that grant recipients will be expected to follow. The application period opens the day the NOFO is released on May 1st of 2025. The application period will remain open for 2 months and close on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. SCDES plans to announce awards around 2 weeks after the application period closes. Here is the expected application timeline for fiscal year 2025 compared to the expected application timeline for fiscal year 2026. The fiscal year 2026 timeline here represents what we anticipate will be the standard timeline for future funding cycles under this grant. The grant's period of performance is the total estimated time between the start of the initial award and the planned end date. The date on your grant award agreement acts as the official start of your project's period of performance. Period of performance will be 1 year for planning and engineering projects and 3 years for construction projects. Extensions to the period of performance are allowable but cannot be guaranteed. Period of performance extension requests should be submitted in writing to SCDES at least 90 days prior to the period of performance end date. Application requirements. Applications for construction activities must be prepared with the assistance of a professional engineer licensed in the state of South Carolina and must contain a cost estimate prepared by the engineer. A list of qualified professional engineers can be provided to you upon request. Applications for planning, engineering, and design only are not required to be prepared with the assistance of a licensed professional engineer. Here's a list of documents required for a complete grant application. The completed application form, which you will be able to access from the grant's dedicated webpage on the day the notice of funding opportunity is released. An eligibility narrative stating how you, your dam, and activities included in your scope of work meet all required eligibility criteria. A project narrative providing required dam and site information and an explanation of the project's scope of work. The project milestones for the proposed scope of work. A milestones worksheet template will be uploaded as an attachment to the notice of funding opportunity on the grant's dedicated webpage. A detailed budget for your proposed scope of work. A match commitment letter that provides a description of match that will be used to meet the recipient match requirement. A cost estimate, including a detailed breakdown of project costs. A copy of the property deed. If you are an HOA, a copy of the HOA's covenants and bylaws will be required. And your emergency action plan or a plan to develop an EAP within 12 months of the award date. Applications for construction projects will also require the following: an engineer's statement that the application was prepared with the assistance of a professional engineer licensed in the state of South Carolina, and a cost estimate certified by a professional engineer. This next section will provide a brief introduction to some of the procurement requirements under this grant. Please note that a future webinar focusing specifically on the procurement process will occur at a later date, and additional training on this topic can be provided to grant recipients if necessary. Unless otherwise approved or specified by SCDES, all state procurement requirements must be followed. Engineering services are an exception to this rule under this grant and may be procured without the need for a formal procurement process. For construction contracts, SCDES plans to offer grant recipients a list of pre-qualified contractors to simplify the procurement process. Those who opt not to use the list must still adhere to state procurement guidelines. Some state-specific procurement rules include licensed contractors for construction projects. Contractors must not be debarred or suspended. Procurements under $10,000 only require one quote from a single vendor. Procurements between $10,000 and $100,000 require 3 written quotes from 3 qualified vendors. The award must be made to the lowest responsible and responsive offerer. Any procurements greater than $100,000 must follow the formal competitive bidding process. These procurement rules and others, including a walkthrough of the formal competitive bidding process, will be provided in our future procurement webinar training. This next section will discuss how payments will be dispersed under this grant. Funding will only be provided via reimbursement. In order to receive funds, recipients must prepare and submit a request for reimbursement or RFR form to SCDES for review and processing. No more than 80% of the grant funds will be paid before the final request for reimbursement for construction projects, and no more than 90% for all other projects. Record keeping and monitoring. The grant recipient must retain grant records, including documentation of costs and supporting documents, for a period of 3 years. Office visits, site visits, and/or document requests by SCDES for the purpose of monitoring compliance may occur at any time during the period of performance. SCDES will perform construction monitoring visits at set intervals. Grant recipients will be required to submit quarterly progress reports summarizing activities that occurred during the quarter that advanced the project toward completion. Next, we will discuss the appeals process and remedies for noncompliance. Recipients have the right to appeal any staff-made decisions regarding this grant. All appeals will be made to the Administrative Law Court, or ALC. Recipients that are found to be out of compliance with the grant program policies and procedures will be given an opportunity to return to compliance. If a return to compliance cannot be accomplished, remedies may include immediate termination of the grant agreement, cost recovery, and disqualification from future grant program consideration. Next, we'll discuss amendments. An amendment will be required for any major changes to the grant-funded project. The grant award agreement will be considered a legal contract, and as such, an amendment process is required for budget, scope of work, and period of performance changes. The recipient must formally request an amendment to the award agreement at least 90 days prior to the end of the period of performance. SCDES will either approve or deny the request. Future webinars. Future webinars will cover more in-depth topics, including procurement guidelines, post-award grant management, and EAP development. Suggestions for future webinars can be submitted via the survey link at the end of this presentation. You may also email your suggestions to desresponse@des.sc.gov. This concludes our presentation slides. We'll take the opportunity now to answer some questions that have come in via email. We'll take a quick break to allow any additional last-minute questions to come through and return in about 5 minutes to answer your questions. Again, you can submit your questions to desresponse@des.sc.gov.
Okay, everyone. So it's been about 5 minutes. I'm Sam Johnson with the program, and collecting your questions as they come in. Brittany, I think if you're good to go ahead with the Q&A section, I'll start reading off what we've received. Please feel free to keep submitting questions throughout this. If we can't get to it during the presentation today, we'll make sure that we follow up with you directly. The first question we have, and this is sort of a general comment on this. We've got a few messages in as to some technical difficulties with the webinar, asking if this will be recorded, how they can access it, if there are some hiccups in audio or skipping through a couple slides, or inability to access the link in general. I'll go ahead and take that one. This webinar is being recorded. This will be uploaded to our website, to our main grants page for this grant opportunity. We're also going to upload the transcript of it as well for anyone who's had some audio issues. And of course, at any time, please reach out to us and let us know if there's any particular topics that you had issues with hearing or seeing the slides during the presentation. We'll make sure that we get you that information. As to the actual question topics themselves, these are a collection of ones that have come in just today as a result of this webinar. Again, thank you for your responses. In addition to some questions that came in previously during the through the interest survey that was sent out in the couple email updates that we've done about the webinar opportunity today. We've tried to make sure that every topic is touched on in some way. But again, please at any time feel free to send in any questions you have about this grant opportunity or any other requests for information, clarification, checking on eligibility to the website that you can see on your screen there, desresponse@des.sc.gov. And if you have not already filled out that interest survey that we have on our website, that the link was provided in an earlier email. We also have that on the main page for this grant. And we'd love to see where our dam owner community is at in terms of interest in this opportunity, potential barriers they see to getting the funds, and topics that they'd like to learn more about in future webinars. So for the questions that we have, first one we've got, Brittany, is, will there be anyone that can help with the application development for this grant?
But no costs for application development are eligible for reimbursement. We're the DES staff will be able to assist as much as possible, but it is recommended to consult a professional engineer for preparation of all grant applications, especially for estimating the project costs.
Next up, a question on eligibility, or actually a couple questions on eligibility here. The first one is from a dam owner. If my dam is not listed in your provisionally eligible dams listing, is this a bar to applying for this fiscal year opportunity?
It is not. So we have the basic general eligibility requirements, which is the poor and unsatisfactory condition rating. But if you're able to provide evidence of a dam safety deficiency that wasn't initially identified in the preliminary inspection, that's identified by a licensed professional engineer, and everything else is eligible about your application, then we'll still mark the application as eligible.
Another question on eligibility, just for clarification, a dam owned by a local government is not eligible for this grant, correct? And also
Correct.
hasn't changed from years past.
Right. So the HHPD grant, it would be a better fit for a local government that would be interested in applying for um a rehabilitation grant for their dam.
Another question on a few questions here on the engineering element of this. First question is, how can the dam owner find a professional engineer?
So we have a list of professional engineers that can be provided upon request, but any professional engineer um can assist with your application. Licensed in South Carolina, yeah.
Question from a dam owner, why do I have to get someone to do the repair instead of doing it myself?
So we're following the state procurement requirements in order to reduce the risk of fraud, since these are state appropriations, um, and they're taxpayer dollars. So we essentially want to uh, avoid the misuse of state appropriations.
Another question on the engineer. Please elaborate on the engineer's certification of an opinion of cost and what is being certified in that.
Say that one more time.
Sure. If you could please elaborate on the engineer's certification of an opinion of cost and what is being certified.
Okay, so the cost estimate doesn't need to be stamped or sealed, but we do need to know that it's been prepared and reviewed by a licensed professional engineer and has the engineer's concurrence.
Uh, Next question is, how can, as a dam owner, I determine the cost of a complete dam inspection and determine the useful life of components of our dam and repair or replacement costs?
Be
Can you repeat the question? I have John McCain here with me as well.
Okay. So this is, as a dam owner, how can I determine the costs of a complete dam inspection and determine the useful life of components of our dam and the repair or replacement costs of those?
Okay, so I think what's being asked is about a detailed inspection or a more in-depth inspection than what the department normally provides. So, obviously first off, the dam would have to be demonstrate its eligibility. But we if it's an eligible dam, we would consider a detailed inspection or an engineer's more whether it's a geotechnical investigation or an H&H study, that's hydrologic and hydraulic capacity study. Those would be eligible types of projects. And then determining whether a component of the dam has reached the end of its life. Um, we ultimately DES would make that determination based on the documentation that is provided. But typically, I think common lifespans for things like galvanized steel and other, those there are fairly, accepted and published values for what a common lifespan of different types of things are. So as long as it's a fairly well documented and justified um, conclusion, then we would likely accept it.
So following on with that, some more technical project engineering questions here. Asking if you could go a little bit more in depth as to the eligible engineering and construction activities. In fact, maybe could you pull that slide back up with the list of different activities on there, just so everyone can take a second look at it. Um, While doing that, as to the question, these owners are currently working with an engineering firm to provide planning, preliminary engineering, and budgeting. They are raising funds from property owners and hope to have a SBA disaster loan approved this year. They will have funding for repairs and improvements over a period of years, so not for an all-at-once construction project. They're starting with the biggest issues first. So in this scenario, would these owners be able to receive a grant under this program if they only replaced a portion of the dam, say as a wooden retaining wall being replaced by a concrete wall?
Yeah. So Yeah, in some cases, I think that's basically how they scope their project. What we meant by not a, we basically, when we said that has to address the entire dam, is for cases like where you have dams that are the ownership is split by property lines, and you may have a dam that straddles the property line. If the project were to, install some kind of like a drain system on the dam, and it only was on one half of the dam and not the other, we would not approve such a project. But in the case of, say, this retaining wall, if as long as it's not like half of a retaining wall, we wouldn't, that's what we're trying to get at. The as long as the scope of work is a complete, doesn't leave a project half addressed, is kind of what we're getting at. So that would be a staged project that occurs, potentially over multiple grant cycles. We would, each grant cycle is a new competitive process, but yes, that could be done through multiple grant cycles. But what we're not saying, the grant has to correct everything wrong, everything with the dam, because obviously budgetary limitations. This grant only has $1.5 million to start with, so actually smaller scoped projects would probably stand a better chance at getting awarded. So that's something to keep in mind. And we also just want to point out that we're not going to fund both non-construction and construction activities in a single grant. So you either do your planning, your design, preliminary engineering and design under one grant, and then a subsequent grant do your construction, or you self-fund all the engineering and get to the point where you're ready to do construction and then apply for the grant for that.
So another.
Next question, Sam.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's all we've got on that one. Other ones are touching on some other technical issues, more sort of eligibility as well. Of course, Brittany, you covered the condition ratings at the SCDES inspections that would make a dam potentially eligible for this opportunity. So, a question from an owner: how can a dam owner get their dam to have a better condition rating, or what factors into that, and how it links into this grant in particular?
Sam, so what is the question being asked? How to get to a better condition rating?
Yeah. Just how can a dam owner get their dam to a better condition rating through either maybe
Oh, I
through the
think
grant or
maybe if
just
this is
in
a question
general,
about how to achieve a satisfactory rating, potentially.
or I really my take on reading is just better than whatever that current rating might be. What would
Well,
lead to improving or
well, that's done through addressing the issues the department has identified, primarily. But then again, the department doesn't, we don't see and know everything that's potentially wrong with the dam. So identifying additional problems and then correcting them is a way to achieve a higher or better condition rating. Addressing the issues the department has identified, obviously. Now, I will say, a fair rated dam would not be eligible unless we get that engineer's documentation of a significant deficiency. And if in some cases, if a fair rated dam, if it can be demonstrated that the dam is able to withstand the like extreme loadings, whether that's from a flood loading or a seismic earthquake loading, if that can be demonstrated, a dam can be can receive a satisfactory rating. So that's our highest rating, but it can only be given where a dam has demonstrated it is able to withstand the extreme flood, extreme seismic or earthquake event. And therefore, therefore, very few of our dams have been able to demonstrate that. But that could be something that would be eligible if a deficiency is identified and then corrected. That dam could potentially receive even a satisfactory rating at the end of the funded project.
So next questions we have deal with kind of following on that with inspections on dam maintenance. One, now I'll go ahead and take this one. General question on how can a dam owner maintain their dam? We do have resources available on our website, sort of general best practices for dam owners. So we do have that just for, outside of even just this grant opportunity, but just general practice. We do have some things that we can provide as well to dam owners. John or Brittany, do you have anything else to add to that, or?
Well, I would say that, very few of our dams have actual written operations and maintenance plans that have, a timeline or a schedule of needed or periodic maintenance activities. So, we would strongly support we would definitely consider grant applications that would develop an operations and maintenance plan, and we would want an engineer's involvement in developing that plan, because we're talking about a lot of things like, sometimes, different. I'm not talking about just cutting the grass and removing debris buildup. I'm talking about coating or repainting metal components of a dam, or even replacing metal or components of a dam on some set time frame. Potentially, what else? Just things, operations and like testing of valves on a recurring basis, operating valves and testing them. Things like that are established in a written plan. Those are the kind of things we would like to see, in an operations and maintenance plan. Not simply just cutting the grass, but more, more, I guess, valuable or, beneficial activities that could extend the life of the dam and improve the overall safety of the dam.
Following on that, we have another question about dam maintenance. As dam owners, what if they've already started addressing dam maintenance issues based on the report that they received from SCDES? And I guess presumably how might that impact the grant?
The grant's not going to pay for routine maintenance, so it's not going to pay for the routine maintenance. The operations and maintenance plan is a plan. It's not the actual maintenance. It's a plan that says how to perform maintenance over 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Now we have said things such as deferred maintenance that now requires a repair would be eligible, such as removal of, large trees. But again, we would consider that a repair project that is the result of deferred maintenance. We aren't going to actually pay for the routine maintenance itself.
And then another question sort of on the slide we have here, and sort of the phasing of activities. If a dam owner still has engineering estimates to complete before construction can commence, could they apply to each element individually? Meaning, for example, a phase 1 support for engineering planning costs, and then a second grant application for construction.
Yes. So, like John was saying before, the planning and construction actually can't be in the same grant application. So they absolutely could apply for planning and design and engineering the first year, And then the next year apply for construction practices.
But they just said that cannot be done under 1 year, both of those.
That's correct.
Okay. Next couple questions we have, I'll go ahead and take these because these deal with EAPs, emergency action plans. The first question we have is, will a request for updating the EAP, will they be able to include that as part of the grant application? Presumably, Brittany, yes. But also, I just want to note for everyone listening and today and for the recording, at any time, if you email the address that we've got on the screen here and throughout this presentation, desresponse@des.sc.gov, you can email us to check the status of your emergency action plan. Do we have one on file? Is it current? You can also request assistance from our program in drafting an emergency action plan. So that can be done independent of the grant process, but yeah, presumably, yes, that a request for updating the EAP could be part of a grant application, correct?
Yeah, so like Sam, yes, we already provide a service, to create an EAP, or at least to create a draft of an EAP to assist the dam owner in completing it. Now, the kind of EAP, or again, like we mentioned, EOP that that we would like the grant to fund would be EAPs that go beyond what the kind of the basic EAP that we provide. These would be EAPs that to perform a full and more advanced dam breach analysis that looks at the dam breach during a like a major flood event. So the EAPs we provide do not look at what would be impacted if the dam were to fail in a flood or flood event. So that would be an improvement on the EAP. So we would definitely be willing and would want to fund such a project. And then EOPs are a slightly different document that we've not actually ever, we don't provide those, and those require a much more collaborative and community-based approach where it looks at the dam, it looks in the community that would be affected by the dam and helps for emergency management professionals to determine where evacuations may need to happen, how to perform evacuations, how to make warnings, where to potentially create shelters. The emergency operations plan is actually more for the emergency management professionals to be able to respond to a dam failure situation. So those are all that's another type of plan that we would be willing and able to fund with this grant.
We had a few questions come in also on EAPs on some of the specific elements of it, about notification requirements, how best to approach that. We are going to be having an upcoming webinar specifically on EAPs to touch on what John just went through, as well as the SCDES EAP assistance program. So we'll leave. We will, if you have, again, email DES response if you have any questions about your EAP, and we'll be happy to get back in touch with you on those. But that webinar will go through the really tough details as to what all goes into an EAP and what is required and what is best practice. So those questions we'll address in that future webinar. We'll make sure that gets into the presentation. And then the final question we have, I think just a good way to wrap up our talk today. Again, thank you all for all the good information you provided, Brittany, for putting this presentation together. As a dam owner, where do I begin? What's the first step or steps in applying for this grant or determining if this grant is for a dam owner? Where do they start?
I would say the very first step would be reviewing the guidelines that we already have up on the website and also the notice of funding opportunity once that's posted, just to like very carefully review that to make sure that you meet all the eligibility requirements and that everything that you're wanting to do actually is eligible to receive grant funding.
So Sam, I got a couple final comments, so unless we have more questions.
No, just going to mention that's all that we've got on the inbox so far. But again, please keep sending in questions. We'll get back in touch with you on that, especially if you're watching this recording. We'll make sure that we follow up on anything we can assist with. But that's all I've got today.
All right. Well, I got just a few more little follow-ups that so someone, regarding the question about if your dam is not on the provisional eligibility list, are you barred from applying? And the answer was no. If you can demonstrate, through an engineer's report or some documentation that there is a significant deficiency. So I do want to say that you don't have to wait until you've completed your application and then submit that to us. You can go ahead and ask and submit what you have to inquire now if that would make you eligible. We can review that now. Whatever you may have to say yes or no, this would make you eligible before you actually start compiling a full application. So that's so just that they can go ahead and just submit that either to me or through your regional engineer or to Brittany. You go ahead and we can help you or start that review already. There was regarding the gentleman who asked if he could do the work himself, if he's a licensed contractor, sure, he can do it himself. But again, the procurement, hopefully, we would still apply procurement requirements. And so, hopefully if you're doing it yourself, you can underbid everyone, but we still need to have that procurement process to ensure competitiveness and transparency in these construction contracts. So that's why we're applying the procurement requirements is for competition, because these are state tax dollars, and for transparency and to avoid any type of fraud or other issues that could happen if we we want this grant program to continue in future years. So we're being very sensitive to how to make sure that the money is used well and is used in ways that benefit the public and benefit dam safety and so we want to see this grant program continue and potentially get more funding down the road. So I think we've tried to streamline it to be as simple as possible, but not too simple or too or to the point that it could be taken advantage of or misappropriated funds. So that's pretty much it, unless
I'll go ahead and take us out. Thank you everyone who attended this live webinar for SCDES's upcoming Dam Repair Assistance Grant Program. As a reminder, a recording of the webinar will be uploaded to the grant's dedicated webpage linked to the right. To assist SCDES in determining public interest in this grant opportunity and identifying topics of interest to dam owners, we also encourage you to complete the interest survey, also linked to the right, if you have not already done so. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.